If you want to conquer a nation today, you don't send an army, you send an economist. We are taught that empires are built with steel and gunpowder. We are told that countries lose their sovereignty on the battlefield, and that as long as bombs aren't falling, a nation is free. But if you look closely at the modern world, you will notice something terrifying. Look at the massive deep-water ports in Sri Lanka. Look at the copper mines in Zambia. Look at the sprawling power grids across South America. The people living there do not own them. They are controlled by foreign entities, generating billions in profit that instantly leaves the country. These nations weren't conquered by military force, they were conquered by contracts. Right now, dozens of entire countries are being systematically stripped of their natural resources, their public utilities, and their sovereignty, and it's completely legal. It is orchestrated by institutions with friendly humanitarian names promising economic relief and development. But behind closed doors, they are executing the most efficient, frictionless wealth extraction system in human history. This is the anatomy of the sovereign debt trap. And once you see exactly how the trap is set, you realize that almost everyone is already caught in it. To understand how the trap was built, we have to go back to 1944. World War II had left Europe and Asia in absolute ashes. The global economy was completely destroyed. So, the victors gathered at the secluded Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to build a brand new financial world order from scratch. Out of this highly exclusive meeting, two heavily funded institutions were born: the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. On paper, their mission was pure and noble. They were designed to provide emergency loans to struggling countries, to help them rebuild infrastructure, and to pull their poorest citizens out of poverty. They were marketed to the public as the ultimate saviors of the developing world. But there is a fundamental rule of geopolitical power. No one gives you billions of dollars just to be nice. These institutions operated on a quota system. The countries that put in the most money, primarily the United States and Western European powers, were given the absolute veto power over how the money was used. It wasn't a charity, it was a global bank, and the West held the keys to the vault. The true purpose of these institutions remained hidden until the trap was ready to be sprung. By the 1970s and 80s, developing nations across Latin America and Africa were practically force-fed massive loans when global interest rates were low. They were told to borrow heavily to modernize their countries. Then, the global economic climate shifted. The US Federal Reserve suddenly hiked interest rates to the sky to fight domestic inflation. Overnight, the debt of these developing nations doubled, then tripled. They were suddenly drowning, completely unable to make their monthly payments. Facing total economic collapse, these desperate nations turned to the IMF and the World Bank for emergency bailouts. The institutions smiled and agreed to hand over the cash to save them. But the money came with strings attached, thick, unbreakable iron strings known as structural adjustment programs. The IMF told these desperate leaders, "We will save you, but you have to play by our rules now." To get the bailout, a country was forced to fundamentally alter its own laws. They were ordered to cut state spending on their citizens' healthcare and education. They were forced to eliminate minimum wages to make labor cheaper. And most importantly, they were legally required to privatize their most valuable national assets and sell them to foreign corporations. This is how the invisible invasion happens. A country takes a loan just to survive the year. To get that loan, they are forced to sell off their water rights, their oil fields, and their national railways to multinational corporations for pennies on the dollar. Suddenly, a citizen in a developing country realizes that their water bill has tripled because a private equity firm in London now owns their city's reservoir. Worse yet, the initial bailout money rarely actually helps the citizens. A massive chunk of the loan is used to pay highly priced Western engineering and construction firms to build massive infrastructure projects like highways and ports that are specifically designed to help extract the country's natural resources faster. The money goes Full circle. It leaves the IMF, goes to the developing country, and immediately flows back to Western corporations, leaving the host country holding the bag. The country is left poorer, stripped of its assets, meaning in a few short years, they will inevitably need another even bigger loan. The debt becomes mathematically impossible to pay off. And that is exactly the point. The debt isn't a mistake. The debt isn't meant to be repaid. The debt is the leash. Today, entire continents are trapped in an endless cycle of borrowing money just to pay the interest on the money they borrowed decades ago. They don't own their own land. They don't control their own resources. They are sovereign nations in name only, serving as a global underclass working on an invisible financial plantation. The IMF and the World Bank simply act as the collection agencies. They write the frameworks and they collect the collateral when a country defaults. But looking at this massive web of global extraction raises a terrifying ultimate question. If practically every nation on Earth, including the United States, the UK, and European superpowers, is trillions of dollars in debt, who is at the absolute top of the pyramid? If everyone is borrowing, who is actually lending? Who holds the ultimate ledger of human history? I answered that exact question in this video right here. Click on the video on the screen right now to see exactly who the world owes its money to. It's not the banks you think it is, and the truth will change how you view the global economy forever. I'll see you there.